If this was a city and people were having symptoms from something coming out of a smokestack, they would evacuate. They don't even investigate in the rural areas.
The odors are so strong and they suffocate. There's times you just don't feel like you can breathe. It's unbearable.
I worry about the pollution on the fields when they spread the manure. I worry about the water supply from our wells. And knowing the smell coming from these barns, what is going on with our bodies?
I am afraid that we're going to have a major outbreak of infection. We're going to have a major outbreak of illness, and I'm afraid we're going to be unprepared to deal with it.
There are, within a half a mile here, 8,000 hogs. Can you imagine what that is doing to the water supply?
My concern is that they've been spreading all around here, and every time it rains, I don't care when and how, every time it rains, where they spread, that waste is going to run down into the tiles and into the county ditches, from the county ditches to the rivers to the lake. It makes its way there.
The rivers and streams, you better not wade in them anymore. They've got so much cow manure in them.
Our family farming community is being destroyed by industrial agriculture.
The rural residents around Hudson, Michigan are living a nightmare. They're surrounded by 12 concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. These industrial-sized livestock factories confine thousands to millions of animals year-round in massive buildings. Michigan has at least 200 CAFOs, and that number is growing. CAFOs generate enormous quantities of dangerous manure and waste. The waste from beef, dairy, and pork CAFOs is a concentrated mix of feces, urine, and wash water laced with antibiotics, pesticides, chemical cleaning agents, blood, birth fluid, even dead animals. These facilities store tens of millions of gallons of this putrid liquid waste in open pits or lagoons until it's spread on farm fields for disposal. As a result of CAFOs and their waste, the citizens of Michigan's rural communities are suffering the consequences of environmental pollution, significant health impacts, and economic decline.
We've lived here 50 years, and all our neighbors here have lived here 35 to 40 years. And they had no right to move in on us with those buildings. It was wrong, and they have no conscience about what they did. We had signatures. We had 176 signatures that protested the buildings there, and that did not faze them at all.
I feel very betrayed by these people who put those 4,000 hogs literally in my front yard. The smell from the hogs is devastating, and you cannot get away from it. It just will move right in on you. It isn't like the ordinary farm smells. It's devastating.
When we moved here 32 years ago, we were surrounded by cornfields. That's what attracted us to our house. I never dreamt that my next door neighbor would be 4,000 pigs.
The rural residents around here are used to smelling manure. But they always tell me that there's a difference. They says that is not the dairy smell that we grew up with. This is obnoxious smell. We know the difference. This stuff that we're smelling now has been fermented. It's just gagging. It gags you. If this is considered the future of agriculture, then there's nobody going to be living in rural areas. The manure, the urine, the feces, everything that falls in place comes down into the lake.
Since 2000, the Sierra Club and the members of Environmentally Concerned Citizens of South Central Michigan, or ECC-SCM, have been documenting CAFO pollution. County drain maps, aerial photographs, Freedom of Information requests, and ongoing water testing play important roles in this data collection. The results are troubling. CAFOs are causing serious contamination of our air and water, and all CAFOs cause pollution. Reams of water testing results by both government agencies and private organizations confirm this conclusion. The data routinely show bacteria downstream from CAFOs that far exceed Michigan's water quality standards. Volunteer monitoring by ECC-SCM has led the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality to cite the dozen facilities around Hudson with more than 125 Clean Water Act violations since February 2000. Yet every one has continued to pollute and none have been forced to stop operation.
I'm gonna fall in. One of the worst cases we've seen of discharges is when we had a facility spread at 2 below zero in the heart of winter, and it melted off the entire field, went into a county drain, and went through the tile system into a creek, melted the ice as it came down the creek like pudding.
If someone tells me that these CAFO operators are operating within the law, I would tell them that they need to come down here and observe for themselves, because they are not. They are polluting the water and polluting the air and not following the same regulations that other industries have to follow.
We've been all over the state monitoring and investigating the pollution from these facilities. We've been to Huron County, we've been to Allegan County, we've been to Kalamazoo, we've been to Ottawa, Muskegon. We have not seen one CAFO in the state that can operate without polluting.
You've got to stop the pollution from these big stench holes. You can't be allowing them to run their manure down every creek, river, and into every lake. It's even going into our Great Lakes.
One dairy cow produces as much urine and feces as 23 people. A 3,000 head dairy CAFO produces the equivalent amount of waste every day as 69,000 people, more than the population of Saginaw. Cities spend millions of dollars treating their waste, making it safe, while CAFOs do not. CAFO waste is far more concentrated than human sewage, yet no laws require CAFO waste to be treated. The waste is stored untreated in lagoons, often fermenting for months until the CAFO operator spreads it on nearby farm fields. Far too often, the waste runs off fields or seeps through the soil into underground drains called field tiles and runs directly into streams and lakes. When applied to snow or frozen ground, untreated waste flows directly into streams as soon as the snow melts. People who live near fields where CAFO waste is applied have been diagnosed with exposure to dangerous air pollutants that include ammonia, particulate matter, and hydrogen sulfide.
I am both a registered nurse and I'm a full-time farmer. About 3 years ago, I began to notice that people were having symptoms when liquid manure was applied or in the area where they lived, or when people lived close to the livestock factories. When the liquid manure is spread, or when you're downwind from a CAFO or a livestock factory, people often say it's bad odor. It's not. Bad odor alone won't cause you to have burning eyes, breathing difficulties, sinus problems, nausea. This is emissions. Hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and volatile organic compounds are in that air. And judging by the responses I've seen in people and that have been reported to me, they are experiencing real problems.
Hi.
How have you been feeling?
Terrible.
What kind of problems have you been having?
I've got the sore throat and I've got the burning sinuses.
There is no question in my mind that the CAFOs are a danger to those that are in close proximity to them. And I think that the CAFOs are a danger to people downriver from them. I see patients weekly with complaints that are related to exposure to the confined animal feeding operations. And common complaints are sinus infections, bronchitis. Other people complain of abdominal pain and have limited intermittent courses of diarrhea. People have difficulty breathing when manure is being spread, and the volatile components of the manure hang in the air for hours and days on end.
These CAFOs can cause extreme health risks. The 5 gases, the methane, the hydrogen sulfide, the ammonia, the carbon dioxide, the carbon monoxide, Cryptosporidium, E. coli. We're getting bloodworms. We're getting all kinds of possible viral bacterial. We've got Giardia. The list is unlimited. And nobody's checking these things.
CAFOs are affecting my right to farm. They're affecting my neighbor's right to farm, especially the people, on Beecher and Lime Lake area. People who had roadside stands outside. You should ask some of the local farmers what happens when they put their produce out there and there's manure or dead cow parts or, flies in the area. We had one horrific episode of dead cow parts and flies, and an enormous amount of liquid manure over-applied surrounding a farm, and the flies went on from August 31st of 2003 until October 1st at least. And I went over several times, stood at those farms, experienced it, and so did DEQ. In fact, it was DEQ who verbally told us that probably the flies were a result of not just the liquid manure, but the dead cow parts that were mishandled at a facility, as well as spread raw on area fields. Does anybody besides me think that's a public health threat? I mean, nobody did anything about it.
Look at the past. If you look at Walkerton, Ontario, the feeding lots caused contamination of the water supply, and people became sick and people died. We know that the threat exists. We know that large amounts of manure spread onto land and trickling into our waterways and wells is a cause for concern. What we don't have is a cooperation between agencies to monitor CAFO performance